Okay, we're on the rational inequality, and certainly we've discussed it. A lot of times when you discuss things doesn't mean you understand what you've discussed. What we try to do is hammer across what we've discussed by doing examples now. All right, I want to repeat this over and over again, at least initially. A lot of students have a tough time following. There's no doubt about it. The speed at which some students go is, not the same level that we're teaching at, and that can be a problem. However, you got an advantage here. What you can do is you can hold off and watch these videos later in the week at your convenience. You can slow them down if you like. There's no problem with that. You can also watch these side videos if you prefer to do that as well. All right. I would right now pay attention to what's being done though, and you can always rewatch the lecture if necessary. We're hoping you catch on. It may not be immediately though, but we're hoping that you catch on at some point. I'm going to switch to the whiteboard now. And give me 1 second to do so. And we're going to do the examples. All right, rational inequalities. What are we going to do now? We're going to do example number 1. All right, example number 1. So what's example number 1? Excuse me 1 second. Example number 1, fairly simple. And I'll tell you why. It's compared to 0. That's number 1 requirement. Number 2 requirement, one term completely factored. That's done. Whoever wrote the problem did that for me. So what would I do now? Well, what I want to emphasize to you is that what I would do is I would definitely put a number line down. So I can put a number line down, and that number line, what I'd list as zeros in the problem. Now, granted, we hope you paid some attention to polynomial stuff. This should be real easy to put the zeros down. Now, what are the zeros on the top? 1 and minus 2. All right, so the top becomes 0 at 1 and at minus 2. Where does the bottom become 0? At 2 and minus 1. All right. Now, I hope you remember what we do with polynomials. It's really no different. We're going to do sign analysis. Maybe I'm not getting great at it, but I say with more and more practice, I'll get really fast at this. So much so that I probably wouldn't write anything down. I would just simply do it in my head. All right. Now, what's a good number after 2? I'd say 3. It's more involved. Plug it in. How many factors are there? There's 4 factors. Positive. I'm doing the top. Positive, positive, and positive. Overall positive. All right. Yeah, I'm going to skip between 1 and 2 for the time being. I'm going to go to minus 1 and 1. And I'm going to take a number between minus 1 and 1. I'd say 0 is a good choice. Let's plug it in. You would get negative, because 0 minus 1 is negative, positive, because 0 plus 2 is positive, negative, because 0 minus 2 is negative, and 0 plus 1 is positive. What does that give you? A negative divided by negative, which is positive. All right, let's keep going. I'm going for easies. That's all I'm doing. Let's do over here. What's a good test point over there? I'd say minus 3. And again, at some point, you do this in your head. You don't write it down. You do it in your head. All right, what do you get there? Well, the first factor on top would be negative, because negative 3 minus 1 is still a negative number. The second factor would be negative. And what do you get on bottom? You get negative 3 minus 2. That's negative. That's not so bad. And let's see, what's negative 3 plus 1 is minus 2. It's still negative. Well, what do you get? You get positive on top, because negative times is positive. On bottom, it's positive. All right, let's go for the tough ones. What's a good number between 1 and 2? I'm going to say 1.5. Yeah, it's more difficult. Positive, positive, negative. 1.5 minus 2 is a negative number, by the way. And 1.5 plus 1 is positive. What do you get there? Overall, you get a negative number. Why is that? Top is positive, bottom is negative. Positive negative is a negative number. Let's go between minus 2 and minus 1. People do get confused. We're not trying to confuse anyone. So I'd say minus 1.5. It's more difficult, but let's plug it in. There's 4 factors to analyze. This is what's called sign analysis. Minus 1.5 minus 1 is a negative number. Minus 1.5 plus 2 is a positive number. Minus 1.5 minus 2 is a negative number. Minus 1.5 plus 1 is a negative number. What do you get on top? Negative. What do you get on bottom? Positive. What's a negative by a positive? A negative number. All right, let's go for the question. What is the question? When is it less than 0? I know the answer to that. It's when it's negative. Here and here. That's where it's negative. What's the other question? When is it equal to 0? When is it equal to 0? Well, let's plug them in. If you plug in minus 2, what would you get? When I say plug it in, you're plugging it in here. You definitely get 0. When you plug in minus 1, though, what do you get? A division by 0. And you should be quite clear that you cannot divide by 0. Let's plug in 1 now. You clearly get a 0. Let's try 2. Unfortunately, if you plug in 2, you get a division by 0. So I cannot shade that in. So let's write our intervals down. Where does it start? Minus 2. That's on the left. It's inclusive. Up to minus 1. That's on the right. It's exclusive. Union 1. That's on the left, inclusive. And it goes up to 2, which is on the right, exclusive. Make sure you're getting the same answers we provide to you. All right, that's number 1. Let's go to number 2. Let's take a look at number 2. Wow, looks like almost the same question. Let me just blow this up a little bit. Get a better look at it. And let's go to town on it. And what do? Number line. It's already compared to 0, completely factored. Whoever wrote the problem is quite kind about it. Number line goes down. I'm going to list the zeros on the bottom, which would be at plus or minus 1. That was easy. Top is more difficult, and I understand it is for a large number of our students. So 2x minus 1 becomes 0. 2x equals 1. X equals a half. Now, where's a half? It's below 1. I hope you realize that. All right. Let's do the other one. 3x plus 5 equals 0. 3x equals minus 5, or x equals minus 5/3. All right, and sometimes I don't even know where minus 5/3 is. Well, it's minus 1 2/3. It's got to be over here somewhere. Now, why is this problematic for a large number of students? There's fractions. That's why. What am I going to do, though? Test values, and I want to keep it real simple. So what comes after 1 for a test value? 2. All right. Now, I'm going to go simple ones first, and we'll go through each one separately. What's a good number between minus 1 1/2? Minus 1 and 1/2? I'd say 0. Really simple. What's a good number below minus 5/3? Well, if you thought about minus 5/3, it's minus 1 2/3. I would say minus 2 would be a good test value. All right, got 2 more to go. What's a good number between 1/2 and 1? Well, I'm going to use a decimal. So 1/2 is 0.5 and 1 is 1. So I'm going to say 0.7. All right, here comes the killer. Well, I hope you realize that minus 5/3, as I said, is minus 1 2/3. Let me write that down for you. Minus 5/3 is minus 1 2/3. And you should realize in decimal form, that's minus 1.66 repeated. So I want to pick a really easy number between minus 1 and minus 1.66. And what would I say? I would say minus 1.1. You're free to choose. All right. I know it's a lot of work. Someone says I can't test them all. I'm going to guess at it. Guessing is not appropriate. It would be like Russian roulette. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's test it. And it should be really simple to test these things. I'm going to test 2 first because it's really simple. What do you get? Let's see. First factor would be, 2 times 2 is 4, minus 1 is, well, that's positive. Then you get 6 plus 5 positive. On the bottom, you get positive, positive, overall positive. That's really simple. I know it's work though. I'm going to try 0 because it's so easy to do. What do you get? Well, if you put 0 on top, what would you get? You get negative, positive. I'm doing the factors, just sign analysis, negative, positive. We're just testing out 0. That's all we did. What would that give you? Negative on top, negative on bottom. Negative divided by negative is a positive number. All right, let's keep going. Let's try -2. I know it's tough. Let's try it. Let's see, -2 on top, negative, 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 negative. Well, if I did that, what would you get? Negative times negative is positive on top. On the bottom is positive. It's positive. You're going to get faster by trying though. All right, let's try 0.7. I know it's more difficult. 2 times 0.7 is 1.4. 1.4 minus 1 is a positive number. 0.7 times 3 is 2.1 plus 5 is a positive number. That was simple. 0.7 minus 1 is a negative number. 0.7 plus 1 is a positive number. What do you get over there? Negative. All right, let's go -1.1. First factor would be negative. 3 times -1.1 is -3.3 plus 5 is a positive number. Yeah, you need arithmetic skills to do that. You would get a negative number and a negative number. What do you get? Negative on top, positive on bottom. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. All right, let's go for the question. Someone says, what is the question? You'd have to be able to read that. It has 2 questions. The first question is, when is it positive? Because it says greater than 0. I can now shade that in. It's positive here. That goes on forever. It's positive here. And it's positive here. What's the next question? Is it ever equal to 0? Well, let's try it out. If you plug in -5/3 to this thing over here, you're going to find out it is in fact equal to 0. If you plug as -1 into that, you would find out division by 0. You can't divide by 0. Don't try. If you plug in 1/2 to that expression, it would turn out to be equal to 0. If you plug in 1, you get a division by 0, and that is not allowed. Please do not shade that in. Let's write our intervals down. Left to right, -infinity. That's on the left, cannot be touched. -5/3. That's on the right, it's being touched. Union, it starts up at -1, which is on the left, parentheses, not being touched, goes up to 1/2. It's on the right, it's being touched. Union, 1, it doesn't touch it, but it's on the left, and it goes off to infinity. Are we getting that answer? Of course we're getting that answer. Right now, these are more involved, but nonetheless, they're still doable by the techniques that we've described to you. All right, let's go to number 3. And looks pretty complicated. So some people say, I have a better way of doing it. We don't want to stop you. We want to stop you getting wrong answers though. I got to get it to 0. And that's like the absolute requirement. So let me write that down for you. So 1/x -1 greater than or equal to 0. That's done. We got to 0. The next thing, I got to get one term, and I have 2 terms now. So let's get one term. Common denominator be x. And what would you get? 1 minus x. Well, let me just repeat this. Compared to 0, 1 term. This is done, completely factored. That's done. Number line goes down. What goes on a number line? The zeros. What's the 0 at the top? At 1. What's the 0 at the bottom? 0. They've got to go in proper order. What do you do now? Test values. Right? Now, maybe I'm not that good at it yet. Maybe I haven't practiced enough. But I think now I could actually talk my way through it. The first thing I want to do is know what the question is. Someone says, what do you mean what the question is? The question is, when is this thing here greater than or equal to 0? Let me just do the greater than, which is positive. What number comes after 1 that you could try? 2. If you plug in 2, what do you get? Negative divided by a positive. That means this interval here is negative. Are negative numbers greater than 0? No. Do not shade that in. Let's go between 0 and 1. What's a good test point between 0 and 1? A half. Plug it in. What do you get? 1 minus a half is a positive number. A half is a positive number. A positive divided by positive is a positive number. Of course, it's greater than 0. So I'm going to shade that in. Notice I didn't write this stuff down. Let's keep going. What's a number below 0 to try? Minus 1. Plug it in. What does the top become? Positive. Bottom is negative. Positive divided by negative is a negative, and negative numbers are not greater than 0. What's the other question? Is it ever equal to 0? Plug in the 1. 1 would make it equal to 0. Plug in 0. Unfortunately, division by 0 is not allowed. So what do you get? The intervals, let's write this down. 0 on the left, not touching it. 1 on the right, touching it. All right. For those students who need to write the test points down, let me just briefly go through that with you. All right. So test point over here, 2. Test point over here, 1/2. Test point over here, -1. If you plug in 2, we're plugging it in here. What do you get? Negative on top, positive on bottom. That would give me a negative result. If you plug in a half on top would be 1 minus half, which is a positive number. And then the bottom would be half, which is a positive number. Positive by positive is a positive. That's fine. If you plug in -1 on top, you get a positive number. Plug in -1 on bottom, you get a negative number. A positive divided by negative is a negative number. Fairly simple, direct. All right. Let's go to number 4. And I'm saying, like some said, oh, this is really the same. They really are the same question over and over again. I got to figure it out though. What's my first step? The 0. So what I'm going to do, subtract x from both sides. That's done. What's my next step? One term. That's done. What's my next step? Completely factor. Number line goes down. What goes on number line? The zeros. Plus or minus 1. That's simple. What's the other 0? The bottom becomes 0 at 0. What do I do now? Test points. I'm going to write these down for you though. 2, a half, minus 1/2, and -2. Let's plug it in. Plug in 2 first. What do you get? Negative times positive over a positive. It's negative. Let's try a half. What do you get? By the way, I'm plugging it in here. Let's do it. What do you get? Positive, plugging in a half, by the way. Positive, positive. Overall, what is it? It's positive. Let's do -1/2. Plus, negative. What does that give you? Overall, a negative. Let's do -2. Plus, minus. What does that give you? Positive. Basic sign analysis, basic arithmetic. What do you get positive over here? What's the question? I want to point out what the question is. The question is, when is it less than 0? The other question is, when is it equal? Let's do one at a time. It's less than 0 only when it's negative. So it's negative here, and it's negative on this interval, which goes on forever. When is it equal to 0? Well, I got to plug it in. If you plug in -1, definitely becomes 0. If you plug in 0, you get a division by 0, and that's not good. If you plug in 1, you still get the 0. Let's write our intervals down. Left to right, -1, it's on the left side, inclusive. 0 is on the right side, exclusive. Union, 1 is on the left side, inclusive, and it goes off to infinity. Now, someone says, do you ever make a mistake? I do. And this is why I want to encourage you. Look at the answer key to make sure you can agree with it. Not that you're close. It should be exactly the same, regardless of your technique. All right, so what do we do? We just did problems 1 through 4. Let's see if we can do 5 now. All right. Oh, boy. Another problem. I'll put it down for you. Someone says, what's the first step? It's always the same. Get it compared to 0. Let me write this down for you. So 1 over x minus 2 minus 1 over x plus 3 greater than or equal to 0. Now, certainly it requires that you've taken Math 100 and mastered that material. Common denominator, x minus 2 times x plus 3. What do you get over here? X plus 3 times 1, which is x plus 3, minus x minus 2 times 1, which is the quantity x minus 2. Let me see if I can do that. And what would you get? X minus x, well, that disappear, which is good news. And 3 minus minus 2, which is 5. What do you get on bottom? X minus 2 over x plus 3. That's done. What do you do now? Number line. What goes down a number line? Look at the factors. What are the factors? Well, 5 on top, but 5 is never equal to 0. The bottom becomes 0 when x equals 2 and when x equals minus 3. My erase dry went too long on that one. Let's take some test values. Again, you don't need to write this down if you don't need to write it down. I would say 3, that's after 2. I would say 0 because it's between minus 3 and 2. And I would say minus 4 because it's below minus 3. Let's plug it in. And I think it's pretty easy. The top number is always positive. It's always 5. What's the bottom number? Well, if you plug in 3, 3 minus 2 is positive, and 3 plus 3 is positive. So overall, this is positive. All right, let's try 0. The top is 5, which is always positive. If you plug in 0 on the bottom, what do you get? A negative times a positive. Overall, what is that? A negative number. Again, if you can do this in your head, please do it in your head. Minus 4, plug it in. Top is always positive, it's 5. And minus 4 minus 2 is a negative number. And minus 4 plus 3 is also a negative number. So what do you get? A positive over a negative times a negative, which is a positive over positive, always positive. What's the question? Let's point it out to you. This is the question. When is it greater than 0? When it's positive. So here and here. What's the other question? When is it equal to 0? It is never equal to 0. If you plug in minus 3, division by 0. If you plug in 2, division by 0. So what's the answer over here? Minus infinity, that's on the left, up to minus 3, union 2 to infinity. Now someone says, where's the answer? It's on the very next page. You're seeing that right over there. All right. Now you got 2 more problems to do. And certainly, hopefully at some point in your career, you say, well, what am I going to get a chance to try? We're going to give you plenty of chances to try. And you can try at any point of your life. You could just start trying. But I'm going to start doing the work. I like to try too. So let's take a look at this one over here. So what do you get? Compared to 0, let's write that down for you. 1 over x minus 4 over x cubed. And less than or equal to 0, right? Common denominator, x cubed. So that will be x squared minus 4. These tend to work out nice. I'll tell you what, we write problems that work out nicely. And what do you get on top? X plus 2, x minus 2. All right, let me emphasize what we're doing over here. We see an inequality. This is called a rational inequality. First step is to get it to compare to 0. Next step is one term and then completely factored. What do you do now? It's the number line. What goes in the number line? The zeros at the top, plus or minus 2. And the 0 at the bottom, where's the bottom becomes 0 at 0. What are you going to do now? Test values. And let me write some down for you. All right. And again, if you're good at this, you don't need to write them down. But I'll say, what's after 2? 3. What's between 0 and 2? I would say 1. What's between minus 2 and 0? I would say minus 1. And what's below minus 2? I would say minus 3. Let's plug it in. Do 3 first because I think it's easy. You would get plus, plus, plus. Everything is positive. Let's try 1. Plus, negative, positive. Overall negative. Let's do minus 1. Plus, minus, minus. Again, I want to point out we're plugging it in right over here. That's all we're doing, plugging it in. Signs, not doing the numbers, just signs. What do you get there? A negative divided by negative, which is a positive. Let's go to minus 3. What do you get? Negative negative, negative. So what do you get over there? Positive divided by negative, which is a negative. All right, what's the question? When is it less than 0? It is less than 0 only when it's negative. What's the other question? When is it equal to 0? Well, if you plug in -2, it becomes 0. If you plug in 0, you get division by 0, so don't plug it in. If you plug in 2, you would get a 0. All right, what do you get over here? Well, I'll write it down for you. It's minus infinity on the left, not inclusive. You can never touch that. -2, it's on the right, and you're touching it. Union starts up at 0. That's on the left, and you're not touching it. 2 on the right, and you're touching it. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, let's put it down. And again, I hope you got the idea what the problem is. We got to get it compared to 0. I'll write that down for you. So it's going to be x plus 4 over x minus 2 plus 2. I got my 0. Now one term. Common denominator. X plus 4 plus 2 times x minus 2. You would definitely have to have some algebra skills to do that. And if you could do it quickly, please do it quickly. What does that give you? 3x, because x plus 2x is 3x. And then 4 minus 4, well, that was easy. That's 0. What do you get on bottom? X minus 2. Let me repeat what we're doing. Compared to 0, one term, completely factored. Well, you know what? I think I'm ready to go. What's ready to go mean? Number line, zeros. The top becomes 0 at 0, and the bottom becomes 0 at 2. What do you do now? Sine analysis. Let me quickly go through it. Talk about test values. They do not need to be written down if you can do it in your head. And I would recommend at some point in your careers that you do a lot more arithmetic in your head than on paper. All right, let's put this down. So what comes after 2? 3. What's a good number between 0 and 2? I would say 1. What's a good number below 0? -1. There's 3 intervals to test out. Plug in 3, what do you get? Positive number on top. I want to put it where we're plugging in right over here. What do you get on bottom? A positive. Hope you realize a positive divided by a positive is in fact a positive number. All right, let's try 1. What do you get on top? Positive. What do you get on bottom? A negative. I hope you can realize that positive by a negative is a negative number. Take -1. What do you get? Negative on top. And you get negative on bottom. What's a negative by negative is a positive. All right, let's talk about what the question is. I want to point out what the question is. The question is, when is it less than 0? When is it less than 0? When it is negative. I'll shade that in for you. What's the other question? When is it equal to 0? Plug it in. If you plug in 0, that would make it equal to 0. Unfortunately, if you plug in the 2, you get division by 0, and you can't do that. So I got my interval. And what's my interval? On the left, inclusive. On the right, exclusive. We're done. Thank you. Let me make sure I'm done. I say I'm done. Yes, 7 was the last question. That's good news.